Very much, President.
Thanks, Jeff. Good luck.
Thank you very much to the business school, Uvula Foundation, the mayor, and thank you very much for coming. I was told we need to finish by 10 o'clock. That's in about 40 minutes. I'm not quite sure what we do in that 40 minutes. It would be better, thanks indeed for everybody to coming. I've just been saying to the professor that there are so many of us here this morning. I really don't know what we're going to do, how to handle this. Because I think that the best thing to have done would have been to have an interactive session. I can address you for 5 hours, if you don't mind, non-stop, and say things which are entirely irrelevant. So it would have been good to find out what you think, what you think the challenges are that we need to address. We are convened here by the business school, Uvula Foundation, and I suppose quite a few business people here, young and old. And clearly, therefore, we would be interested in economic questions, the sorts of questions that would face a business person. And the point that's been made about this focus on leadership is clearly an important one. And the task that the business school does to develop that kind of leadership is critical to our success. Now, if we look at South Africa, this is, all of us know all of this. The South African economy is not growing. I think last quarter, there was a negative growth rate. If in the next quarter we get another one, then we're in recession. Why? And what do we do about that? What's our business leadership saying? What's wrong? It's a perennial problem of lots and lots of people who are unemployable. They are unemployed but unemployable. Technology has developed in a way, and so on, the manner in which work is organized in a business sense that when I grew up, the people who made roads did so with picks and shovels. Then we disappeared into exile somewhere. And by the time we came back, the picks and shovels had also disappeared. You can't bring them back. What do we do? We don't export enough compared to what we import. Trade balance is very bad and has been like this for a number of years. What do we do? I'm saying these are the actual challenges that we face. There's a slowdown, clearly, in terms of the Chinese economy. It's not worrying the Chinese very much. Max and myself and others were in China not long ago together, and then he went again after that. I think he's fallen in love with the Chinese. And we're talking about this. Sure, they say that the 7%, 6%, 7% growth rate for them will be a new normal. That's a phrase that's used. A new normal. As a result of which they will transform the nature of the economy, more technology-based, more focused on the domestic market rather than exports. It'll change the quality of the Chinese economy, and they say that, and then a lot of their lower great technology industries will migrate out of China. And said, understanding our challenges, they said, why don't you as South Africans have a look at that? And maybe you can attract those industries to come to South Africa. And indeed, that's a very good idea. I don't know whether that will solve our problems. But obviously, part of the impact of that slowdown in China, has been the impact on commodities, where countries on the continent, including ourselves, have depended on the Chinese market and that high demand for commodities. Suddenly, the demand is not as strong as it used to be, and the prices, of course, go down. Demand goes down. What do we do about all of this? There's a popular phrase about the African continent. It's good, it's encouraging. This phrase about Africa rising, it's good. It's better than Africa falling. It clearly based on some actuality, some facts. Rates of economic growth over the last few years have gone up compared to what used to happen 10, 15 years ago. Clearly the continent is making progress. Everybody has got a cell phone and all of that. Africa rising. But you look around, you go around the continent and say, what is this rising Africa? What impact has it had on the ordinary people? It's very difficult to see. In terms of reductions of the levels of poverty, in terms of growth and development, in terms of infrastructure, so that the rural people can have a road so that they can get their goods to market and all of that. You don't see this. Africa is rising, they say. All right, maybe it is. But therefore, these are questions that need to be asked. This additional wealth that clearly the continent is generating, which results in the description Africa rising, where is it going? How is it being utilized? What impact does it have on the economy? What can be done to make sure that I'm saying that additional wealth does something further to improve our capacity as a continent to develop? So I'm saying lots of questions like this. Now, some of the answers clearly have to be provided by our business leadership. I was reading an article not too long ago, it must be maybe a month ago, which said it was as a result of some conference held at Stellenbosch. And they were saying the South African corporations are not investing in the South African economy. Why? I don't know the answer, but what I know is that if the South African corporations don't invest in the South African economy, then I'm going to come back here 6 months' time and say the South African economy is not growing. Levels of unemployment are not falling. Balance of payments hasn't improved. But who's going to answer this question? Why is the corporate sector not investing? And indeed, we used to have an international advisory business council. And all of these big business people from around the world, from the US, from Europe, from Japan, from China, from India, and all that, Brazil. And there was a constant question they kept asking, which we found difficult to answer, which was, I'm talking about major corporate leaders from around the continent who are part of the advisory council. And they would say a lot of the South African corporations are holding a lot of their resources in cash, much higher than is normal for business globally. Why are the South African companies so interested in maintaining these high levels of liquidity? Well, we knew the answer to that question, but we were embarrassed to tell. These are foreigners after all. And of course, the problem was, and I'm not quite sure that the problem has been solved, and the problem was that people were not quite sure about the future of the country. The transition, 94, was for some people too good to be true. There's something will go wrong. It's bound to go wrong. Now, if you've got a factory and something goes wrong, you can't take it with you and run. But cash you can. So you maintain those levels of liquidity because you know something is going to go wrong. I'm saying the confidence in the future of the country was at a level which resulted in this question being asked by these foreign business people. Why are the South African corporations doing something which is completely abnormal in terms of our international business experience, so they say? I'm raising all of these questions to say that it would be good if we could have some dialogue about this. And the leadership that is in this room to provide some of the answers to these questions. If we were to say, all right, there's a challenge about the levels of investment in the South African economy. And people who have the capacity to invest are not investing. Maybe spending a lot of money on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It's one of the things I worry about. Whether, in fact, what we are seeing happening, they've been seeing for a number of years, is in fact not a bubble. That instead of putting money in actually putting up a factory, we go and buy shares, stocks and shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And you see this thing going up like 40,000, 50,000, 80,000. One day, it's going to go boom. But what is it that needs to be done in order to encourage the investor to invest? The perennial problem, an old problem in this country, that we don't generate enough savings in terms of the rates of investment that the country needs. So we need foreign savings to come into the country as this foreign direct investment. What do we do to encourage that to come? And to come into what? Do we produce more commodities in a situation in which demand for commodities is going down? Or do we do something else? Which sections of the economy do you develop, of industry? So I'm saying there are many questions like this, but the answers, surely, some of them, must be among the leadership that is in this room. And we don't have time, unfortunately, to get into that. But it is quite clear that indeed we have to answer these questions in a very practical way, both domestically and even, Mr. Mayor, Danny Jordan, even in terms of the metro area, as you were saying earlier this morning. Each time I come to Port Elizabeth, what strikes me is the place is too quiet. There's not enough people in the streets. Certainly not in this part of Port Elizabeth. Maybe if you go to New Brighton and Zwide and those places, or Maklaki and so on, the streets might be busier with people who are unemployed. But what do we do about the economy of this area? Port Elizabeth, Utnake, and so on. Because clearly there's a major challenge here. And it's not a philosophical question. It's a practical question. I'm saying you can extend that to the rest of the country and the rest of the continent who are faced with these really practical questions, which need answers. Now when we're in Beijing, talking to some of the Chinese, we're saying to them that the things that they are doing on the continent, some of them are very good. Commitment, for instance, to help to develop African infrastructure, that's very good. But we're saying to them, but look what also you are the manufacturing capital of the world as China. And a lot of those manufacturers are on sale on the African continent. You know, the traffic on the airlines between the continent and China is very big. To get seats on planes is difficult. And you say, where are these Africans going? Migrating to China? No, they are by no means migrating to China. They are shopping. They are shopping in China, the wholesale, bring back those things to the continent to sell on the continent. So now if you're a manufacturer and you say, look, I want to go and manufacture whatever, you can't compete with these Chinese products which are already on the market. How to address that? Because indeed, correctly, people are saying in terms of the modernization of the continent or transformation of its economy, we need to industrialize, build up a manufacturing sector. But if you can't compete against Chinese manufacturing, then your manufacturing initiative there is going to collapse. How do we answer that? So I'm saying that all of these challenges that face us, and perhaps to allow for a bit of time for people to say something, let me just say this last thing. You know, our mayor, Danny Jordan, yesterday when we were at the university in Nelson Mandela Metropolitan, he made a very important point. It concerns this issue of leadership. And he said, please be careful not to be deceived. I was about to speak. So he says to, and he says, don't think that simply because some people are able to shout very loudly, that qualifies them to be leaders. And I think he's right. We get elected, some of us, into these high positions. You are president or prime minister or something. It does not necessarily mean that you would know the answer to the question. What is it that we do to build a road here? The president doesn't know. You might expect him or her to be able to answer this question. To say, look, the economy is in crisis. Mr. President, what do we do? The president hasn't the slightest idea. It's a big challenge. It's real. That it's not necessarily so that because you've had this democratically elected leadership, that it necessarily knows how to solve these economic challenges that we face. And this is practical, it's real. So we have to answer another question, therefore. What is it that needs to be done to build a proper relationship between business and politics and the business schools, so that we can all of us come and sit down and think together to say, here are real challenges. You can't have a situation where for so many millions of people are unemployed, unemployable, and hopelessly so for the next 20 years. It's unsustainable. So all of us got to sit together and not expecting that there's going to be some bright answer coming from the president, but it has got to come from all of us together to say, what is it that we do to solve this problem in a practical way? I think that's the challenge of leadership. Now, we've got the leadership here of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University Business School. I do hope that the business school is producing this kind of business leader who's able to engage in a manner that helps us to produce his answers. If not, then there's something that's going to be missing. But we need this business leader who's going to be able to say, even to learn protocol. Now, when you meet an elected head of state, you can't say, hi, how are you? No. You know, what's the protocol, Danny? I mean, for instance, when I see the mayor, I can't say Danny. I say, Your Worship. And he smiles. If he likes it, you know, it's nice. You know, I'm saying even the skill. The business skill to say that, look, as business people, we've got a responsibility for the future of our business and the setting in which our business must thrive. Because if everything is burning around here, you don't think your business is going to burn, of course you are wrong. So what is it that we all of us do? How do you produce this kind of leadership that is able to help, I'm saying, to answer these questions? I think it's a challenge for the business schools, but I think it's a challenge for all of us to assist in that process, because if we don't, in the end, we're going to be remaining with all of these major challenges. Peter Swart doesn't have to come here. Where is he? Oh, there he is. You don't have to. Let me. Shall I manage the question and answer thing? Okay, thanks. All right. It might save a bit of time. I don't know if anybody has got anything to say. I'm looking for. There's a hand down there. Yeah, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Good morning, Mr. President.
Morning.
Thank you very much for a very enlightening talk. I'd like to just add to what you've just said, that the leaders of today need to engage with communities. But in addition to that, leaders of today need to also understand how to implement what business and community are actually telling them. That seems to be, in my opinion, a huge problem, where ideas are forthcoming from businesses, from people, but it fails to be implemented. You are very right as well in commenting about the lack of feet on the beachfront and other suburbs. And perhaps, and I open this up to the business community, perhaps one of the gaps in business is tourism. And how can we attract more tourists to the city and in that way open up business, open up opportunities to the man on the street. But I think that primarily with leadership, it's implementation of ideas. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Correct, I'm sure we'd all agree with that. I wish I knew what the ideas were. Please, there's a hand there.
Okay.
Not that one. And that's right. And then after that, the lady.
Thank you. Good morning. I just want to make one correction, Mr. Ex-President. I don't think that the people are unemployable. That is the first correction. Maybe it's the black people that are unemployable, but we study from the same institutions. But for some reason, we graduate in numbers, especially from the black institutions. But yet, when we go to industry, we are told that we don't have the qualifications or the experience to do the work. Now, to draw the parallel between the unemployable and the article that you said you read, excuse me, that says that corporate sectors, they are not investing in South African economy. It actually agrees with what I just said now. Because the reason they are keeping their money in their pockets is the risk that they have into the country, because they are not certain in terms of where the direction is. But at the end of the day, that is costing the whole country. Thank you.
Thanks. There's a lady there, that's right.
Morning, Mr. President. Mr. President, I hear what you are saying, but I just want to focus the corporate sectors. And regarding to corporate sectors, the problem is that why they take their monies away to the country, it is because of the government policies. Like if you now, right now, in regarding tourism, and then there's a thing that stopping the tourists to come, the visas thing. And then if you look at a housing policy, there's a thing that called the Municipal Financial Management Act. That is, there was a legislation that was taken in 2004. And that legislation is saying that the land must be auctioned to people. And then you look at the disadvantaged people. Will they benefit out of that? They won't. And right now in this in Nelson Mandela Bay, it is difficult for the officials to sell land because there's no policy because of that legislation that was taken in 2004. There are companies from abroad who wants to come and invest in this country because of those legislation. They are unable. Therefore, the government and also the stakeholders, they need to move as fast as possible. Okay. And do something to make change so that we can benefit. Because if you look at our country's economy, it's going down. And some of the people, they say they are going to leave this country because there are lots of things, challenges that are happening. We are not growing and people are tired. So we need to move. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, please move with the mic. Yeah, that's right. To the lady here.
Good morning, Mr. President. I am Khama Myoli, and I am one of the students at the Nelson Mandela Bay Business School. I think there's quite a number of my fellow students here today. Hashtag. Mr. President, I think one of our concerns is we are involved in vigorous assignments and studies in the area of innovation and sustainability as a solution to job creation at the university. And I think as students and as youth and future leaders of the country, we would like a platform in order to be able to involve and have a seat in the round table with the decision makers, such as our political leadership in Nelson Mandela Bay and also the captains of industry. I think my question is, what opportunities can be given and afforded to us as students to be able to voice our opinions and in order to be able to come up with innovative solutions to the area of unemployment for youth? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, please. This gentleman right there.
Thanks, President. My name is Tolika, Mr. President. I've got a comment and a question. The comment, I want to align myself with the gentleman there around the skills discourse. Mr. President, in as much as there is high level of unemployment, especially amongst the youth, but I don't think the response that they are unemployed is because of lack of skills. I don't agree with that notion. I don't agree because we have 600,000 unemployed graduates. And for me, I think institutions of higher learning have provided enough support to equip these graduates for labor market. So I'm saying the notion that they are unemployed because they don't have skills is a misleading notion. So I don't agree with it. That's one comment. The question, President, you spoke about the leadership deficit yesterday. And at the same time, the society in general is speaking about the readiness of women to take over. Do you think that time has arrived for South Africa to have a women leader? Thank you very much.
There's a young gentleman here.
Hello, my name is Ranjan Kamfer, and I would like to ask you, how does it feel being a president? How does it feel?
Okay, all right, right down there.
Good morning, Mr. President. My question really is around the issue of the fact that we have an issue around skills and the balancing of when we gained independence in 1994. Did we maybe not have a formula that maybe is not working, where we opened up, but we still needed to develop internally? So hence, we haven't caught up because we came with a force that was maybe not skilled sufficiently, and we needed to also get investment coming into the country, and that is competed with developing local skills.
Thanks. Let me deal with these questions well. Okay, maybe the last one is because we've got 5 minutes to answer all of them.
Good morning, Mr. President. My question is that there's a massive trust deficit between business, labor, and government. And I'm wondering whether we should have had or should have an economic CODESA. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me say this thing about the unemployability business. I'm not talking about graduates. I'll talk about graduates just now, some of whom are unemployable. I'm talking about, you see, you've got a modern economy, relatively, which require particular skills. Part of the challenge in South Africa was, you see, you had, recall our history. Your apartheid economy depended on cheap black labor. And so indeed you had lots of cheap black labor. That's why I was talking about shovels and picks on the roads. But the technology changes. So technology changes, and suddenly you got all these big machines which are now digging up the roads and so on. You don't need picks and shovels. What happens to that person who only knows the pick and the shovel? Where are they going to work? Where are they employable? And that's a very serious problem in the country. I'm not talking about university graduates. I'm talking about the bulk of the unemployed. A lot of the bulk of the unemployed in this country are people who don't have the skills which running of modern society requires, which the economy requires. And it's not their fault. And therefore, there needs to be interventions made. The last person that was raising, some interventions need to be made to solve this problem as an effort has been made. Because if you don't make it, people will remain permanently unemployed. Because you can't, once I was here in this city many years ago, and somebody who was working in the motorcar industry said, part of the problem, we are workers, skilled in the motorcar industry, we actually know what to propose in terms of innovation because we're working there. But the reason we don't do it as workers is because we're going to lose jobs. It's better technology, higher levels of productivity, is going to mean less jobs and more dependence on machines and all that. And therefore, he says, President, I think we must do something about slowing down this technological change. So I was saying to him, well, the things I have to say publicly, I type myself on a computer. So I go doing with 2 fingers, like this, and print it out myself. And what happened, what that means, is that whereas before you would have to write something, and there's a typist to read, to type, and there's a third person to proofread, those 2 are gone. Because I'm now sitting on my computer. So I said, what do I do? Do I throw my computer away and go back to a typewriter? Of course not, you can't. But fortunately, the person who was a typist on a typewriter is easy to teach if they need any further teaching to use a computer. But I'm saying the person who only knew how to use a pick and a shovel, what are you going to do with that person without the necessary skill? The matter of the graduates, I was raising this thing at the Nelson Mandela University yesterday. What are we studying at these universities? The fact that I've got a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology, who wants to employ me for what? You've got a lovely certificate, it's correct, you got a BA in sociology. But what does it do? I was saying, if you take that BA sociology certificate and a diploma from a further education and training institute college on mechanical engineering, which of these 2 certificates is better? I would prefer the FET one. And that's reality. We need to look at what is its output at our universities. Long time ago, I was a chancellor of a teacher training college in Mpumalanga. And the first year I went there to hand out certificates and say, congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. 99 out of 100 students got distinctions in biblical studies. So at the end of it, and then 1 out of 100 would have a distinction in accountancy, 2 out of 100 get a distinction in physical science or something. Huge, huge numbers. Brilliant students of biblical studies. So I say to the principal afterwards, I say, Principal, this is not right. And he says, look, you are perfectly correct. But the problem is what at some point, this subject, biblical studies, was introduced as a matric subject, and if it counts as your qualification subjects. And of course, young people, they take this thing because it's easy to do. And they pass matric. And when they come here to teacher training college, this is their soft target. So they leave the teacher training college with even better qualification in biblical studies. And he says to me, the students you see here, the ones to whom you are saying congratulations, congratulations for biblical studies, are a product of earlier teachers from here who had distinctions in biblical studies. They are reproducing themselves. Serious problem in terms of higher education, schools and higher education, mathematics, physical sciences. Serious problems. And the fact that we are getting, I'm not trying to run down the humanities. I'm a product of the humanities. But I'm saying, if you look at the manner in which the economy functions, in which society functions, surely you must be able to say the skills we are producing. Our colleague was sitting there. The skills that we say we are producing from the universities, of what use are they? I'm saying that the certificate is there, Master of Arts in something or the other, biblical studies. But in the end, the only place you can be employed is in a church. We even run out of churches. So the skills thing is important. And the matter, I really do hope now that there's been this discussion that is opened up about higher education, with this thing about fees. Let's discuss whatever else needs to be discussed about higher education. And it's going to include this thing. What are we teaching and what are we studying at the universities? Even an obvious question. Our universities are not producing enough university teachers to prepare these people who are going to come back, start with a junior degree, get a master's, get a PhD, and come back to the university to teach. Not enough of this is being done, particularly with regard to the natural sciences. And it's going to impact negatively on the quality of our teaching at universities. So we need to discuss all of these questions to see what it is that needs to be done. I agree. If there's need to, if we say we've got a major challenge of poverty, we have to eradicate poverty. And in order to eradicate poverty, unemployment, and all of those things, and in order to do that, we need to grow the economy. To grow the economy needs to invest. New factories, new roads. Hopefully ESCOM is going to solve this problem so that we have the necessary energy, all of that. If it is government policy that is blocking all of that, and therefore making it impossible for us to achieve this objective of the eradication of poverty, then let's change government policy. And let's point to it. I don't know, you are referring to the municipal public Finance Management Act, the municipal one. I'm not quite sure what it has to do with land. When the legislation was passed to copy the Public Finance Management Act at the national level, it was to address the matter of the management of public finances. But I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. But I'm saying if there is government policy which is blocking the achievement of the objective of the eradication of poverty, inequality, and so on in our society, then change the government policy. That's what I think would be logical. And I can't imagine that there'd be any political party or government and so on which would say, shall maintain on our books policies which have got a negative impact like that. So you saw the recent decisions of the government, which I think were correct, when they decided to do a review of our visa policies. Because you can't say, we want to attract people to come to South Africa as tourists and this, that, and the other. It's a very important part of our economy, and it employs lots of people. In the meantime, I'm going to block people coming by making it difficult to issue visas. Can't say that. One of those two things is wrong. So fortunately, it's a decision taken to review the visa policy, which is very correct. So I'm saying that government policy needs to be changed if it has to be changed. Women leadership, entirely agree. There's no reason why women can't be leaders in any respect, in any aspect of South African national life. There isn't any. Presidents, corporate executives, vice chancellors of universities, presidents of republic, and so on. No, there's nothing that really ought to stop that. And I think that even if we just recall what our Constitution says in terms of creating a non-sexist society, surely a non-sexist society means exactly this, that there can't be any discrimination in terms of access to whatever on the basis of gender. So indeed, sure, I'm sure we should have attended to all of this if we didn't a long time ago. The issue that's raised about a trust deficit, and I agree. I think it is obvious that as South Africans, we really need to be able to sit down to say, what are the common challenges we face? Now forget about the label I carry, that I'm a business person, and another one carries another label, they are a diplomat or whatever. I think we're born South African first before we became business people, or whatever. And to say, as a country, we are facing a serious problem of poverty, of unemployment, of inequality. Let's take these three and say these are national challenges. What do we do together to address these national challenges? I think that kind of approach is necessary so that we can then sit down and say, all right, we've agreed poverty eradication is a common national challenge. What is it that we do? What are you going to contribute to that outcome? And what are you going to contribute, depending on our various capacities? And maybe in that context, we will then develop this necessary mutual trust among ourselves. And the point that was made about a trust deficit is correct. Because in the end, I think if we don't do that, then I've got my own unique interests. Last night, again at the university, we were saying that, of course, the government was quite correct to say that, look, let's not have any increase in tuition fees next year. And so let us discuss everything else. Quite correct. And indeed, the vision of free education from primary to high to university, I don't think anybody can contest that, because we need an educated population. But we then got to answer the question, even if I am not paying any fees, the university still needs resources to be able to run. So the money must come from somewhere. Now, if the only thing I'm doing is thinking of it as a student, this thing, I'm going to stand up and march and jump up and down and say, down with this, and so on. Free education. But if you say, all right, now let's sit down and discuss that. No fees for you, free education, that's okay. But somebody will have to pay. This university will still need resources. Now let us say it is government. The public sector must finance higher education. Good idea. But don't forget that also there are poor people there who slept last night without eating. They need a grant. It's going to come from the government. There's a pensioner there, long finished working, did a lot of things to develop countries, a pensioner, needs a pension. There's a rural road that needs to be built, has to be built. Money must come from somewhere. There are so many challenges in society. Now, if the only thing I think that matters is my students' life, that I must pay no fees. The rest of the society, okay, no, sure. What does that mean? Does that mean if we say, all right, no free higher education, but we still need to finance universities. For that reason, we're not going to build any more clinics. Because you have to make decisions of that kind. So I'm saying you can't, as a society, we can't survive if all we look at is our own small parochial partisan interest. What is in the interest of the transformation of South Africa is many interventions. And therefore, we do need to work together so that we deal with this trust deficit matter. Now, the last issue, you just asked by a big gentleman there. Well, I would not wish this on anybody, that they should become presidents, not of South Africa, maybe another country. It requires too much work. And then you got to think there are too many challenges. Pardon? Oh, very, yeah. No, you see, for instance, just as the last example, you know, when the cabinet meets, the agenda is essentially decided by the ministers. Because the Minister of Health has a cabinet memorandum on whatever aspect of health. Minister of Finance has got a cabinet memorandum. Minister of Transport has got a cabinet memorandum, and so on. So now this is 10 points on the agenda for this meeting today. On this memo, you've got to take decisions on of these 10 memoranda. And indeed you do. You go through all of them. All right, agreed, fine. This is a collective cabinet decisions on roads, on health, at the same session. Now, the responsibility of the Minister of Health is to produce a proper, reasonable, rational, whatever, memorandum on health. And that's all. Make proposals, indicate what the financial implications are, and all of that. Minister of Transport must do the same thing about roads. Now, the president who is chairing has got to understand all 10 memoranda. You've got to understand all 10 memoranda in order to be able to say what the Minister of Health is proposing, which he or thinks is quite correct, is actually in contradiction to policy we decided 6 months ago when we were discussing roads. It's inconsistent. And therefore, Minister of Health, please go and redraft your memorandum. The president who is chairing has got to be familiar with the entirety of this. The ministers know. Ministers have particular responsibilities in their portfolios. Now, this is a problem of being a president. That's why I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Because you can't sleep, you've got to be studying all these things, you've got to try and know, and then you've got to be nice. You've got to be nice to all the ministers. No, thanks a lot.